Right, so are we ready to get started? Some of you might know me. I might be a brand new face to a lot of you. I'm Paul from PENTAX Medical. I'm the Market Access Manager. Just giving John a brief respite from chairing this whole day. I'm just going to chair this short panel session. PENTAX have a long history in endoscopy, and it's really only as the NHS got into quite an evolutionary cycle over the last few years that we've branched out. We've included the decontamination side of things in our business as well. And it's because we follow a partnership approach on the endoscopy side. We work with our clinical partners when it comes to challenges around education provision, scaling up education, providing it on a commercial basis. We do the same for pathway redesign, getting the new community diagnostic services going, helping them figure out where, when, how to deliver endoscopic procedures in a new way that's been heavily demanded of them. So I just wanted to give a brief introduction before we bring the panel in for a good questions, answers and discussion session on how that sort of translates, how the NHS is progressing, what that means for us for decontamination, and how we could work together to achieve those goals. So the biggest problem that we have is obviously the population. It's not just that the population is aging. We do hear that a lot on the BBC, but actually cancer is increasing in every age group. From the bottom to the top, it's not just the older populations. So the care pathways that need to come in to deal with that are far more expansive. We're looking at more endoscopy locations. And diagnosis is expected to be, it's not expected, it is directed to be achieved earlier, much earlier in the journey. However, there's already a workforce pressure. There's already insufficient people to hold an endoscope. There are more retirements due, and that predicts a further decline in the numbers. So we're looking at more locations, more procedures, more patients, fewer staff. It's not an easy challenge for them to overcome. So we're helping them work in full system pathways. That includes right from the start when the patient first has a dodgy symptom, all the way through to the end result, which is hopefully a full recovery. We all know how that game often turns out, though. So these pathways inevitably mean that there are going to be some new stakeholders. There are not enough endoscopists. So we're going to see nurses, nursing endoscopists, clinical endoscopists, GP endoscopists. There's an endoscopy transformation conference in London in 2 days' time, which is heavily represented by the primary care societies. There's going to be some big changes there. So not just who's doing it, but again, where. The regional networks need to create their own solutions to this. We've seen CDCs come in. There's been a lot of money from the Centre for Endoscopy Transformation, as they call it, but standalone community endoscopy, including in those GP practices. Now that takes us back, from a decontamination perspective, a lot of years to a lot of challenges that were removed on purpose, and it brings them right back in there, but for different reasons. And we're going to have to try and overcome some of that. There will be a big focus on hospital specialist centres. The specialist clinicians in the big hospitals will be doing specialist procedures. All of the low-value procedures in their language will be reduced in number and then relocated to the community. Now, that doesn't mean the low-value procedure is just not worth doing. It just means it doesn't bring the revenue required to keep a very expensive acute hospital afloat. So we'll see a lot more diagnostic procedures, screening procedures, another low level pushed out into the community. So the specialist endoscopy centres will emerge. It will take time. It's not next Tuesday. It'll align with all of the major colorectal surgical hubs. The regional networks, again, they'll have to deal with this. So we're talking cancer networks, ICSs, and a lot of the innovation groups as well, and clinical networks. Patient flow will be measured front to back by digital technologies that don't yet exist. So there's a strategy here that needs to be built. But I think the be-all and end-all is from a decontamination perspective. There's got to be some significant solutions to get scopes to all of those different locations. Do we have decon in all of those locations? That's not possible, because then you have a workforce challenge as well. So where do we do it? How do we do it? How does that fit in with the clinical model? How do we get scopes there on time? And more importantly, one of the things that's come out in abundance today, how do we get scopes there in a way that inconsistent staffing can manage? So we're going to see insourcing of staff, outsourcing of staff. We'll see GP endoscopists with HCPs helping them prepare their scopes. We're not going to have consistent expertise, best will in the world. We're not going to have it when it comes to preparing endoscopes. We need reliable, simple, consistent technologies to help them bridge those gaps. As I say, we work with the system as a partner here. We drive NHS Academy education. We're looking at building facilities with them and for them. We've designed a lot of pathways. We're differentiating ourselves from suppliers, and from the endoscopy side, that's worked. We hope to achieve the same with you guys by being useful. So we were asked in 2023, alongside all suppliers, to produce a carbon reduction plan. It took about a day and a half, so we got that done. We put it on the website. Nobody's looked at it since. But we had to do that as a supplier. Then we had to update it with more detail of our carbon emissions in 2024. So we did that as well, and also no one's looked at it, but we ticked that box. And as a supplier, we're on the good list. We'll get some Christmas presents, and everyone's happy. By 2027, we have to add more emissions to that, and we have to do it at a product level. But we're not interested in playing that. We've done all those things, that's fine, but we're working with our customers at a trust level, at ICB level, on the sustainability metrics that they face. Because actually, when you buy an endoscope from us, or any capital equipment, whether it's decontamination or clinical, you have that for 7 to 10 years, or longer, if those assets are sweated out. And we see every challenge that comes up. So the electricity consumption of some of the decontamination technologies is phenomenal. The water consumption in decontamination is huge, especially for those private units amongst you that actually see the bills for that water. And the waste generated as well. One simple example is all those cleaning brushes. You know, they have to be manufactured. They have to be shipped, put in a packet, put in a box. You've got to then separate your packet from your box in your recycling and your clinical waste. It's a lot of work. But you can achieve, you have those challenges simply by using medical technologies. If we put our heads together, we use the skill sets from the industry side, the NHS side, the private sector, healthcare. We can actually start looking at all of these different challenges that the NHS face. So, very quick example, and we'll get into it before we go to the panel for questions, is if there's that much more endoscopy being done, how big does your decon unit need to be? You know, the construction costs, the construction upheaval, the time it takes. So when we look at the construction and manufacturing side, you've got to build something, then you've got to buy all the equipment to go in there and fix it. So one of the prime focuses for us as a partner is to produce technology that doesn't take up space. Some of you have already been to talk to us. Thank you. You'll have seen the small devices we have. But that also impacts the freight transport. I don't know if you're transporting big boxes of air. I'll use the drying cabinets as an example. They take up a lot of space, but they don't weigh much, and it's not a high-value commodity to transport, so it comes at a high cost instead. So at a system level, you might hear our name a little bit coming down in your direction, because we're working with people on metrics, measures, challenges, problems like this to try and overcome it. These are our solutions. We're not going to be too product-focused in all of the conversations that we have over here today, but when we can replace up to 6 of those drying cabinets that don't need to be manufactured, shipped, installed in your elbow space, taking up room in a whole new building that needed to be built for them, you can buy these little plasma typhoon guys. Suddenly we have a solution to not needing bricks and mortar. We can refit decon where it lives. We can expand capacity without building, without moving. When we look at aqua typhoon, we can eliminate every single consumable in the pre-clean process. So we can get rid of the cleaning brushes, we can get rid of the detergents, the syringes, we can reduce from about 40 litres of water in a sink down to 2 or 3 litres of water. We have technologies here that not just create efficiencies, not just improving the work environment, but that really come to grips with the challenges that the system faces when it's trying to get that much clinical care out there. Now, we're trying to get a little bit more evidence behind it, build some experience, and we'll hear some of that from the guys on the stage shortly. But because of our interactions with the system, we were advised to put these technologies forward for a prize fund that was looking to elevate technology that has such potential for sustainability and efficiency. And we were awarded a fully funded real-world evaluation by Health Innovation Wessex. And the plasma typhoon, not only does it save you space compared to all the drying cabinets, it uses 22 times less power than one of them. That's quite phenomenal when you scale it up to how many cabinets you guys in the room would be using and going back to your departments to use. It used 64% less single-use plastic waste than the previous storage device that was in the department where it was evaluated. And that was 2,628 kilograms. That's quite a significant amount of waste. It costs you to remove the waste, but you've also got to purchase it in the first place. And the actual savings were £107,000 in year from evaluating this technology compared to drying cabinets and previous storage device. So that's why the system's talking about us. That's why we're expanding from just the endoscopes to the technologies that are used throughout the life cycle of that endoscope. But I wanted to give everyone the chance to hear some of the answers to a lot of the questions that we were asked today, but also ask your own questions, because it's very clear to all of us that these technologies sit outside of a lot of the current guidance, as innovation always does. And we need to get past some of these hurdles. So we invited some key people with some great experience to come and talk to you today, answer some of the key points. So we have Dr. Andrew Sibley from Health Innovation Wessex, key lead author of the evaluation. I don't think I need to introduce John Prendergast, a very well-known face from the AED environment. Now, Greg was meant to be with us. Greg was one of the first to install these technologies and start getting all of these benefits. But unfortunately, he's been unwell and hasn't been able to join us. So Greg's provided Andy with 4 pages of notes to answer some of these questions. And Andy's going to do his best to channel Greg, but without the fake beard that he wanted to wear. I wouldn't let him do that. So I'll hand to Andrew to quickly introduce himself.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me, Paul. I'm Andrew Sibley. I'm from the Health Innovation Wessex. That's one of 15 health innovation networks that exist in England. We're funded by the NHS, so we're all embedded within NHS trusts. Wessex, our primary mission is to support commercial companies and for free, and support the trusts to move innovation from companies and into the NHS as optimally as possible. That's the primary mission. Wessex, in another capacity, also has an insight or research team inside their particular HIN. And as Paul mentioned, we had the opportunity to do an independent evaluation of Plasma Typhoon, and very much wanted to do that to support the company, support the site, and be agnostic about the outcome. We were clear to Paul that we didn't know what was going to happen, and I presented the small detail of the actual evaluation at the IDSC last year conference. And Paul's brought copies of the report. They're online on the Health Innovation Wessex website. If you just Google Wessex and Plasma Typhoon, it will pop up to see what it takes to do a real-world evaluation. It's extremely helpful, I think, in the understanding the transformational journey of a piece of kit or a new way of working from the commercial side into the benefits for patients and staff and the service efficiencies. I just would take a minute just to highlight some of the experience we've had. So we work with hundreds of innovators each year. And there are always very predictable challenges about moving innovation into practice, and there's a whole field called implementation science which looks at these issues. And I thought one really nice take-home message today would be to have a look at this framework called NASS, NASS, which stands for Non-Adoption, Scale, Spread, and Sustainability. So NASS. Google that, and it will pop up, and it will come up with all these areas that should always be looked at, no matter what it is, what box, device, or gadget. They always you always need to interrogate the value proposition, always ask who's adopting this, what different levels of staff, AEDs in this case, and other members of this community of decontamination. I think you can't go wrong then, really, to really de-risk the implementation process to make it not trouble and expensive and bumpy for everybody. Just another quick point was, is there's still quite a side issue is de-implementation. What are you going to stop to make room for plasma or aqua all the myriad of options you've got in front of you. Because we keep seeing in evaluations and our change agents who support, as I say, for free, the trusts and the commercial companies, we keep seeing hybrid situations going on where you've got the old way and the new way running at the same time. And that actually dilutes the value of that new method, both financially, because you've got multiple systems needing to be bought, consumables, staff time, staff training and so on. But it also reduces the ability to see the full benefits. And that's exactly what we found in the evaluation of Plasma Typhoon, where in the site that we looked at, they didn't have medical air being piped in to their decontamination department. So they needed air compressors at an extra cost, extra maintenance, and extra electricity. So those were some of the interesting things we found there. I think in a specific case of Plasma Typhoon, I want to call it pre-implementation. That kind of decision-making process seemed to be more important than the actual logistics of getting in and training the staff on how to use plasma. It seemed to be the discussion beforehand with AEDs in particular as a very knowledgeable and informed group. I think John will help me, but I think there's 15 in England and 35 across the UK who are obviously involved in validating or working around the regulatory challenges that exist for drying solutions that don't meet HTM 0106. And so that's been an interesting finding from the work, but also which has been mentioned previously throughout today. So I think that's very much the elephant in the room from a non-decontamination expert. That was the elephant in the room for me, was how we're going to move forward with changing those regulations to, or adapting them where appropriate to take into account the opportunities of these new devices that are out there. So I'll just pause there and let you move on. Okay.
Thank you. John, did you want to say a few words why we've invited you today?
I think for me, my experience with this product started. We done Welsh Government surveys, so we visited all NHS Wales hospitals. We looked at decontamination protocols for endoscopy, SSD, community dentistry, etc. And it was a huge learning curve. And one of the learning experiences I took away from that, and again, a number of my colleagues who were sat here today, was that when you, and a bit concerning what you were saying earlier really, but when you're looking at certainly endoscope decontamination, and there was a migration to take it back into the centralised environment using decontamination professionals trained for the purpose. And that's been the driver in Wales for probably 10 years or more, really. And when we done the survey, we done one for endoscopy 2014, 16, 18. We had that migration and encouragement to move to the central units. And what we were finding, and this is where this particular product was an invaluable asset, was that if you look at the controlled environment cabinet, obviously you need to have, as we touched on this morning really, there's got to be an awareness of the 3-hour rule, how to insert the scope, how to make sure we're aware of the traceability systems, etc. Which works fine in a central decon unit that's managed by professionals. But when you have controlled environment cabinets in places like A&E, ITU, theatre, where there's, let's be brutally honest, the staff there have got other priorities rather than managing endoscopes. There's lives at stake in these departments. We found the variabilities in practice in those particular areas was vast, and from the central unit where we were encouraging, again, what we talked this morning, training, competence, we were going in areas where a nurse may have been there for 2 days and she or he was expected to load the scope in the cabinet, unload the scope in the cabinet, no idea of traceability. So this type of product, and others I may add, gives you something. It's a bit like a surgical set. It can sit on the shelf, it's been validated, And all the clinical teams need to do is just break the seal, use the endoscope, and send it back to the central area. And that, for me, was a huge learning curve, and which I'm sure we'll talk about this particular product. That was a significant advantage to me. And we rolled, I think we've got these in 2 health boards, probably 4 or 5 facilities. And up to now, I don't want to speak too soon, touch wood, if it is wood, up to now it's worked quite well. So that's where my experience is with these type of systems and these type of products.
And Andy, if you want a very brief intro that Greg would have provided.
Yeah, so as Paul said, Greg can't make it today, but he runs SSD and the EDU in Croydon. He employs 33 staff in his team, and last year they did just over 16,000 channeled endoscopes, reprocessing them. Historically, they had 6 washers, and most of their drying cabinets were within the department, but they had them dotted around the hospital. And what his challenges were the fact that he would store a scope and then there'd be a need from a department to have that scope. At that point in time, his drying cabinets were basically embargoed for 3 hours. So he was having that response to clinical need and becoming a challenge. I'll come back to his other device shortly, but what he was trying to do was look at efficiency, his labour, the costs, also staffing as well, because it became a challenge, because it was always, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, can you get this done? That was his challenge. I worked with him. He also wanted to reduce the risk of cross-contamination, because the doors on his drying cabinets were open more than they were shut during the day. And that was a challenge. And he just said from the skill set he had, he just couldn't reconcile that with the doors opening all the time. So he wanted to simplify the packaging. And what he's gone from is drying cabinets dotted around the hospital to actually now he has 4 plasma typhoons. What he has done is moved on to the aqua typhoon now, and he's following that because for his staff, the challenges there were 16,000 scopes needed brushing. All of those, the channels were being brushed 3 times. So you're talking 50,000 brush passes. Okay, it's not one person, but he was getting RSI. Also, he was having staff after a while were having issues with the neutral detergent, and they'd have to step out of the dirty room and be permanently in the clean side. With the aqua typhoon, it's removed the need for brushing. So they've got rid of 16,000 cleaning brushes a year, but also removed the neutral detergent. I've got a lot of other facts here because actually it was 8 pages of paperwork. But what I will do is I will answer the questions on behalf of Greg rather than myself. So I'll give his answers to anybody that has questions.
So we do have a few talking points because we had lots of questions at the stand, but does anyone want to put their hand up and ask any of the panel members a question? So we've got a lot of people here that already use the technologies, a lot of people have come to talk to us, but these are some experts who understand the process of change. Got a couple of hands.
How do you cope at the end?
Oh, hold on, there's a microphone coming your way.
Right, I work in a theatre department. How do you cope at the end of a Friday? My staff are off, say, 6:30, and we've got 4 scopes to process. How do I guarantee that they are going to dry those scopes appropriately with the hairdryer or whatever, the thingy? Because I am very concerned that at the end of a long week, there are shortcuts, and I don't want that to happen. And I know if you put a scope in a bag wet, we're opening a whole can of worms.
I'll answer that as Greg. And if it was bronchoscopes or cystoscopes, it's 1.5 minutes in a drying cycle that is measured, and you basically scan yourself, you scan the scope, and it has the parameters within it. If it was a gastroscope,
it's colons and gases.
Yeah, colons and gases are 5 minutes. EUS are 6 minutes. It is a cycle. You can't rush it, and the evidence is clearly there. We've got everything published. What you can't do as the person in decontamination is cut corners.
I know.
Because if you cut a corner, the machine alarms, you then don't get the printout. You don't get the printout, you don't have the traceability. What Greg has also done is worked with a third-party company and has now got it aligned with the reporting tool. So now it isn't even paper traceability, you've got digital. So,
for me, the guys take a scope out the wash,
yeah,
they spin round, it goes straight in the drying cabinet, scan, 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 they can do it in 30 seconds. I don't know how I'm going to sell it to them. You know, they want to get away at the end of a, 3, 4, 12-hour shifts or whatever, and I'm saying to them, sorry guys, you've got to stay on. Get these scopes properly dry before you put them in the bag.
it's a 5-minute cycle. I think I'd like actually, I am aware that there's other people out there that use this system, and I'm sure they could actually speak up. I know, so Nicola may want to speak.
Oh, hello.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, someone gave me the mic, so. Okay, so before I start, so I work with Croydon Hospital. I work closely with Greg. So I used to hold the quality manager position, currently holding the surgical instrument and training manager positions. So when we first started using previously the plasma typhoon and now the aqua typhoon, one of the challenges we had as an NHS organization is, clear the backlog. I mean, that's the clinical team's main aim. And for us to support the clinical team, we need to process the scope as quickly as possible. Now, when I first started, I mean, we used to do like 6, 7 endoscopy cases per day. It comes up to 10, 20, and now we're currently on 60 to 70 flexible endoscope per day. And the NHS don't have enough budget to process or to buy those number of scopes. So in a day, sometimes we end up processing, or the clinical team end up processing using that scope 3 times in a day. So we need to clean the scope as quickly as possible. At the same time, we don't compromise the quality and the safety of the patient. Now, by using the aqua typhoon and the plasma typhoon, I mean, because both machine has time, so, there's no shortcut to it. At the same time, it helps our colleagues because there's also mention about RSI. Because imagine you need to push the brush a few times, at least 3 times, and that's repetitive. So it helps us. And now also mention about chemicals because certain stuff has hypersensitivity to certain chemicals. And now, because of that, we have certain limitation on our staff. But by using these 2 technologies, I mean, in some way, we improve the staff well-being because before, not a lot of staff want to work in endoscopy decontamination unit. Some would just work in SSD. But now, some people would even volunteer, I want to work in EDU. So, and at the same time, we save on the consumables and all those changes which help the department. So I hope it helps. So thank you.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you. I think it's a really interesting question. I think there's never any shortcuts, but this is a technology that completely dries the scope, no moisture remaining. So you have that confidence of a very dry scope in the bag.
We have 2 of these in 2 separate units. The staff have no issues with using them at all. They're used to using drying cabinets, and then the plasma typhoon was introduced as well. And they had absolutely no problems with moving or transitioning to using that technology as well. The clinical staff loved it. In fact, one site has asked if they could get rid of all of their drying cabinets and we just go to plasma typhoon. We're a little bit anxious about that because if you have a breakdown, you've got no facility to store at all. So what we tend to do, again, like the gentleman was saying at the back, there isn't a finite amount of scopes in a system. So you're reprocessing the same scopes again and again. So we tend to deliver to one of our busier sites. They get their wet scopes throughout the day. Then we fill their drying cabinet, and we only have a 7-day life in a drying cabinet in Wales. And then anything that's left over at the end of the day, we pack and that has a 1 month packing life, 1 month shelf life in the bag. In our acute unit, because we're off-site, everything gets plasma typhooned because we don't have the luxury of getting it back to the user within 3 hours. So for us, that's a safety aspect. Also, when we were having a little bit of issue with various scope manufacturers, Andy will tell you, he came and we were having issues with misting in bags, and so we thought, oh, this isn't working properly. So we did a little trial ourselves on site for a few weeks, and we double dried them. Absolutely no water came out of the scope on the second cycle of drying. What we actually found was, I don't know if anybody uses the tip protectors, they're like a little basket, and they go through the washer with the scope. What we were actually finding was that was holding the moisture, and that was what was causing the misting in the bag. When we took those tip protectors off, and if you think about it, if your scope's put in the washer correctly, it's not going to be subjected to an awful lot of damage, but that tip protector is generally what people would use in their drying cabinet, is it to stop the ends from knocking together. But we took the tip protector off, 0 misting, 0 wetness in the bags. I have to say the clinical staff absolutely love them, especially places like theatres where we've got the difficult intubation scopes. It means that they could use a scope, have it washed, have it sent back, not have any method of packing, no drying cabinet, have it on the theatre site, and they were just keeping it in a wooden box until they wanted to use it 3 weeks later. So well past the 3 hours. You know, it'd been in a drying cabinet, but once it'd come out of the drying cabinet and past its 7 days, it had expired, but they were still using it. Now they come round once a month with their difficult intubated scopes, and they can have them for a month. But like I said, we don't have the luxury of having drying cabinets that go beyond that 7 days. So for us, this technology's been really useful.
I think just coming in there, but what the guys are doing with Nicola and that, I think is important. When the machines went in, obviously there was a strict validation regime, and I think it's important that there is, wherever you have them. I'm a bit concerned with that gentleman saying about time being the governance factor. Time is important, but I think quality needs to override time, because you need, as we discussed this morning, you need to eradicate biofilm, you need to have a dry scope if possible, and this is where, with this particular system, all the validation tests we've actually done up to now have been successful. We are always a bit wary with such innovations, just in case something does come round the corner to hit us back, but up to now it's been a relatively successful project. I think Nicola's fed back staff. Well, they're happy with it, so that's half the battle. But whatever you do, there has to be that routine performance qualification to make sure that, you know, no matter if you're doing it right on day one, you're doing it right throughout the operational life as well. So that is important. Efficacy of the process and making sure that the system is applicable to your product family of scopes as well, because you may have different scopes to what Nicola and the team has in an Iron Bevan.
Just to build on John's comments, I think with the evaluation we did in our site with Paul on plasma, we had a look at staff if there were areas to look at for a real-world evaluation. Staff acceptability is obviously very important, and that was something we wanted to interview them about and really understand. And reductions in repetitive strain were noted in comparison to the other storage system they were running at the time, as well as the large drying cabinets. Another area was the actual time and speed, because that's obviously a claim of PENTAX, that it's faster, so we wanted to look at that too, and look at the time it takes to go through the process. But one thing we couldn't do, which was a shame, was to look at these full end-to-end, entering the decontamination unit, being pre-washed, washed, and so on, all the way back to the theatres. If we could have done that, it would have been an even better evaluation, but that's something to consider. And I think then looking at the implementation and the challenges it has is a really important area, because it can work on paper, these devices. They can do everything they say they can, but still be difficult to implement because the disruption it may or may not lead to, depending on the context. So context is always important to consider if you, for any of these devices.
And I'll just add on behalf of Greg, one of the things he said that was most important was actually the training and the implementation. He was saying it was seamless, but what Greg did was actually made sure that he held PENTAX and me with my other hat on, not being Greg, to account and make sure that training was there, it was documented, and there was follow-up, because actually you can have the new device, it makes it pain-free, and it did for him as long as the training's there. And it was what we worked on in South Wales as well, is make it easy, because then you get the buy-in, because it's the operators in the end that need to do the buy-in, not the Gregs, and also not yourself. You're not there at the coalface like they are. So that's important, and that's what we did. As I said, he's got a team of 33. Any of those 33 now can rotate through, and they have the training. So rather than, I don't want to be in that room, I don't want to be in the dirty side, the clean side, that for him is what was important and what worked.